Welcome to The Ripple Effect with Soria, where we discuss personal development, the entrepreneurial journey, and impact. Here is your host, Armando Soria.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. I am very excited for what we got coming, but first, just want to make a quick reminder. If you find value in the show, do us a huge favor, help us grow, share it. Share it on socials, follow us, subscribe. What's up, Sean Martin?
What's going on, brother? How are you?
I'm doing great. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest is the one and only Sean Martin, joining us from New York, the great state of New York. I'm happy to see you here, bro.
I'm happy to be here, bro. Thanks for having me. I was excited when you reached out to get me on the show. Been looking forward to it.
Yes, sir. So for those of you that don't know Sean, Sean is an established entrepreneur, a motivational speaker. I should start with a father, a husband, and he's doing a phenomenal job with that. And also an aspiring author that has a book coming out here this year. We'll dive into that a little bit more. But Sean, can you do us a favor, bro? Can you maybe just start off with introducing yourself to those of us that may not be familiar with you, and we'll just go from there, bro.
Yeah, sure, brother. So Sean Martin, always start with originally from the Bronx, New York. I know people that I've met along the years, and they'll tell me, yeah, they were born in the Bronx and moved somewhere else when they were 4. But when you ask them where they're from, they say the Bronx. So I'm guilty of that. Great place to be from if you make it out in particular. So, originally New York City guy. Now I'm living in the outskirts in the suburbs of Long Island, New York, which I affectionately call Mississippi North out here. The great red state of Long Island, because when people tell you, from New York, and they always have this opinion of you, but
sure.
I say that jokingly, but as you touched on, proud husband, proud father of 2, boy and a girl, 6 and 2 years old, almost 2 years old. Also an entrepreneur. I work and built my business in the field of durable medical equipment here in New York. Been doing that for the last 8 years in the capacity as an entrepreneur and owner. And prior to that, I was a marketing person, marketing liaison, physician liaison, going all the way back to a donut boy, which I affectionately call my original position, which was going to the front desk, knocking on random doors, bringing donuts on occasion, and trying to get prescriptions. So it's just been a process which has led me to where I am today with the entrepreneurial minded endeavors that I take on. I'm now a commercial real estate investor, as we briefly touched on. And I love the intro to the show because it's about self-development, entrepreneurship, and impact. And now that I've been able to transcend some of the hardships I've come from, my real mission is similar to yours in that I just want to touch lives. I want to share what I've learned and hopefully alleviate the learning curve for the next generation, avoid some of the mistakes that I made, and hope to just instill some of the values and some of the lessons that were learned along the way.
Absolutely, man. And that's beautiful. And as it should be, right? And so I had the privilege of meeting Sean in New York, in New York City, actually at an event where he was speaking to an intimate crowd. And I heard his story, and right away I was like, man, this guy got it, man. So I thank you for joining us. And man, can we dive a little bit into your background growing up, and that way we kind of give listeners a feel for what it was like during your time in the Bronx and the amazing journey that you've had to transcend, your environment to get to where we are now.
Yeah, for sure, brother. That was a story that I reluctantly shared at that event because I was inspired, which is what we're here to do, by 2 other female speakers who shared their traumas and their tragedies and still transcended to become, strong, just empowering women. And their courage led me to sharing my story. So coming from humble beginnings, I grew up in a housing project in the Bronx, raised by a single mom who immigrated here from the Dominican Republic back in the day. So I'm a first generation. I was born here. Unfortunately, I don't even speak Spanish, which I get teased about all the time as a Dominican and Puerto Rican. However, that is the way of America. Immigration, children who are born here, maybe they speak the language of their ancestors, maybe they don't, and then that next generation rarely does. So
Yep.
growing up with that culture, but also the New York City, Bronx culture around the time that hip hop was taking off, late 80s, early 90s. I lived through the unfortunate crack epidemic that swept through the country and decimated New York and decimated families for generations to come. And I got to see a lot of that growing up, and I was fortunate enough to avoid that because my mother was very strong-willed, very strong-minded, very loving, pulled me out of the streets on a few occasions where I was up to no good, pulled me away from the people that would have led my life down the wrong path. Not to say I didn't make some mistakes, but I didn't make any massive mistakes.
Sure.
Until later in life, because my ego got in the way. But it was a loving household. It wasn't necessarily, ideal. There was dysfunction. There was alcohol. There was drugs. There was, some abuse that was around us, and even sometimes at home, truthfully speaking. But nothing that isn't considered normal, unfortunately, when you grow up like that. So many things that aren't normal are considered normal. So, fast forward in my 20s, running the streets, but also working. So pretty unique in that I'm a college educated guy, but I also always had one foot in the street. So you're talking about a guy who was doing professional medical marketing, but at the same time hustling in the street, whether it be clothing or weed or drugs. And that shit really just speaks to the duality and I want to say the warped mindset that I come from. I can't speak for everybody, but essentially the job wasn't my path. I was never a guy who wanted to clock in, wanted to do 9 to 5. Even then, I was in a position where I came and went as I pleased, but I was always good at making other people money. So I had the freedom to come and go as I pleased, as I said. And that also freed me up to go get the extras. And that came in the form of hustling. But I never saw it as anything that was bad or anything that was, it wasn't legal, but at the same time, I wasn't hurting anybody. There was a demand for it. So that's how I made my extras. And from the age of 26, between working and hustling, I was already making well over 6 figures. So always did well for myself, but eventually got caught up in my late 20s and ended up getting into some trouble, hanging out with some people I shouldn't have been hanging out with. And that led to me being incarcerated and actually spent 2 years in prison, which is something that I'm just beginning to get comfortable sharing because I have stepped into my purpose of helping others. And there is real power in that story. So despite being raised with love, despite being able to avoid the criminal path of, a childhood like that, despite going to college, I still found myself with a street mentality well into my 20s, even though I was able to make a decent living doing other things. But it spoke to the fact that I wanted more and I was going about it the wrong way. So God has a funny way of knocking us on our ass when we're not on the path that we're supposed to be. And that was my story. I had to be knocked on my ass for a couple of years in order to really find who I was, to find out who I was, to be honest. So God put me in that position for a reason. And even though I didn't automatically realize why I was there were some gifts that came out of that. And I always say that was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I looked at it like that early on when I was going through it. And the reason being is it really hit the brakes on my life. And, if I kept going down that path, who knows where my life would be today.
Right.
Forget impacting other lives. I could probably be heavily addicted to drugs or into a criminal lifestyle, maybe even, been harmed or done harm beyond repair. So I'm happy that that happened to me. I got to learn a lot of things about myself inside, what I was made of. And it also taught me to just keep moving forward, and taught me how to just reshape my identity. Like, this is not who I am. This is where I'm at right now, but this is not who I am. I'm not a criminal. I'm not a bad person. That experience really forced me to look in the mirror and take a good look at my life. I was fortunate enough to meet my now wife just 9 months before going in to do a 2-year prison sentence. So again, God works in mysterious ways, and learned the emotional intelligence that would serve me and still serves me to this day and allows me to help others, because I'm very in tune with who I am, and I learned why I did the things that I did. And a lot of us just react.
Yeah.
And this isn't necessarily people that come from humble beginnings or violent upbringings or trauma. A lot of us as human beings just react, and we don't know why we react. We don't have that emotional intelligence to say, wait, let me take a step back. Let me process this. Let me connect the dots here. All right. Yeah. Oh, I'm disappointed. So this is leading to resentment. So this is leading to anger. And here I am lashing out. So there's a process, and you've got to trust the process of growth. Another big thing before moving on that I learned in that situation was that I can frame and shape my life to become whatever I wanted it to be. I read close to 200 books while away. I filled up numerous composition notebooks, those black and white notebooks from when we were kids, filled up hundreds and hundreds of pages of self-development, goals. I basically mapped out my life for the next 10 years. And I would go back on occasion and just look at the notebooks, which I still have to this day, and holy shit, I would be on target, you know?
Yeah.
And we talked off screen about manifestation. That is real deal. It is really, really real, man. I 14 years ago, I wrote that I was going to go to a Tony Robbins seminar and I was going to walk on hot coals. And here I am last October telling Tony Robbins in person this story as we're having this, minute conversation at one of his events. And his reaction was just genuine, like, holy shit, And that was validation that if you put it into the world, you put it into the air, you put it into the universe, whatever you believe in, you speak it to God, you speak it into existence, you speak life, there's a high likelihood that it's going to come to fruition. But if you don't, you've got no shot. You've got no chance. So I was able to take a very bad situation, reframe it, and make me stronger for having gone through it. And, I met my now wife, which has been transcendent. I grew up as a man, settled down. She pushed us to have a family, which has made me grow by leaps and bounds. And all of this came as a result of that shitty situation. So go figure.
Go figure.
Go figure. And that's what inspired me to go back and do some good. And I think, I'll have the ears of the kids that need it the most, or the people that need it the most, because, everybody needs a hand. Everybody needs good words, inspiring words, just to get them out of a rut sometimes. Now more than ever, we're dealing with mental health issues, and we need people like yourself. We need people like the people that we're coming in contact with, on a daily basis, because we're on these journeys. And we need to build together and be the light for a lot of these other people that unfortunately don't have that light.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we talked a little bit about that off screen yesterday on our phone call. It's one of those things where a lot of it for me, I realized early on, because I grew up here in Salinas, California, in the 90s, and it wasn't necessarily the happiest place on earth. Right?
It wasn't Disneyland.
Not quite, at least not in my neighborhood, And same thing, loving home, and a lot of people around me, they've struggled, right? Drugs, alcohol, everything else in between, whatever. And it's one of those things where we grow up and we're not exposed to the possibility, You know what I mean? We went to school, and at school, teachers said, "Hey, go be a doctor, go be a lawyer." You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Right.
But
Who do you know that's a doctor or a lawyer?
Exactly. Right. The role models, and that's
Sounds like a pipe dream. You might as well say, "Hey, you can be the next president of the United States," and you're like, "Sure."
Yeah, and that's so it really stood out to me what you're doing with your nonprofit, the real mentor, right? You want to talk a little bit about that since we're on
Yeah,
that?
sure. Back in 2015, believe it or not, I formed on paper corporation named Real Mentors, Real Success Mentors specifically, shortened it to Real Mentors. REAL, Real Life Examples Altering Lives, because I was fortunate enough to get a taste of speaking in front of high school kids as part of an after-school curriculum that was put together by some very generous, public school graduates who had went off to do well by themselves and invited me in a few times to be a guest speaker. And I was told on numerous occasions that I was blessed enough to have resonated with a lot of the kids and my story. And I think it was just the rawness and the truth telling. I wasn't telling them to go be a doctor or go be a lawyer or, any of those things that conform to society's idea of what it is that you should be. Now, I'm not knocking school,
right,
because school, in my opinion, is necessary. However, once we as entrepreneurs see the lessons and the values that it takes to excel in entrepreneurship, we realize that school played a very little part in giving us the tools that we needed to succeed. Those tools were gathered through mistakes, through action, through failing, through trying, through doing, and through learning from others.
Yep.
They weren't learned from a textbook. They weren't learned from a professor who could, go through a lesson plan. It was learned through living. And that is my purpose with Real Mentors, is to go back into the school systems and create a curriculum, which is still in process, that can teach kids of all ages, varying from 12 to 22, so junior high school through college, and just show them the things that are going to benefit them in life, whether it be entrepreneurship, mindset. The power of dreaming big, the power of belief is so key in anyone's success.
Absolutely.
That it's not something you can quantify, but a seed needs to be planted that if you don't believe, it'll never happen. It just never will. So financial literacy, spiritual awareness, emotional intelligence, again, just touching on all the things that have benefited me and benefited the people that I've worked with over the years that have made them successful. So school is a great tool to lift oneself out of poverty. It's a great tool to make a certain income to lift you out of those situations of desperation and lack of hope. But how many people have we come across over the years that are in a job that doesn't light them up? How many people are not stuck in a job because they can choose to move on, but how many people have given up? They've just, they've looked at this position or this career and tried to move up the ranks, but it just doesn't keep up with the cost of living or inflation or anything else. But again, it's a slippery slope, because as an entrepreneur, I don't knock school, but I don't put as much value on it as, let's say, my parents or their parents did, or your parents did. And I don't knock employment, because I run companies and we need employees. So I try to make it the most generous, good environment for them to work in, because I remember being at jobs that I couldn't stand. Everybody can't be an entrepreneur. Everybody can't be a scholar. So there are some basic tools that you can learn, and people like yourself and myself can go out and teach the younger generation. Just think about silly little things in the hood, right? Cell phones. I got family members that they didn't pay the bill, and every month they had to hustle up a new name to get a new cell phone, or every 2 months. It's like, how many times are you going to change your number? To just,
Yeah.
to just, and again, it sounds silly to some people, but this is normal stuff where you come from nothing. So teach these kids, don't give anybody your information, even your mom or your aunt or your cousin to leverage any kind of loan or things like that. Teach them about credit scores, bank accounts, interest and how that works, inflation and how that works, compounding interest. If you're going to invest, just plant seeds.
Yeah.
You can't walk them through the whole process because, you go to school. But I think there is an importance of planting a seed that is often overlooked. And I think just by taking the time to invest your time and plant those seeds, not everyone is gonna come to harvest.
Right.
But there's a lot of them that are gonna grow into, beautiful, beautiful plants, trees, flowers, you name it. Different kinds of foliage, different kinds of seeds that get planted. We're not all gonna be the same. And we all need somebody to inspire us, to mentor us, to teach us. And whether or not we're aware of it, that's going on all the time as we're growing up. Yeah. So that was my reasoning for starting Real Mentors. Right now, I'm in the process of just getting on stages and getting in rooms where I'm meeting the administrators that are going to help me devise that curriculum. So also off screen, we talked about imperfect action, right? You started the podcast for one reason and it quickly shifted into a more meaningful, more impactful reason. And the same goes for me. It's not a finished product, but I'm on social. I'm putting it out there so people can actually go back and scroll and keep scrolling down, and you're going to see the process and how I got there, as opposed to waiting for all things to be in line and then finally posting the end result. So it looks like it's this perfect thing. Wow, you got all your shit together. Now I want to show you that you got to trust the process, and it's going to take some time to make it happen.
No, that's huge, man. That's huge. And again, just to repeat what we were saying then, is exactly that. It's, I was almost going to hold myself back from doing something as awesome as this podcast, because it was like, you get the limiting beliefs, right? The limiting beliefs come in. It's like, who am I to host a podcast? You know what I mean? I'm not a guru. I don't want to go on there and people to think that I'm thinking that I know everything about business and entrepreneurship and mindset, and it's like, nah, dude, no, I'm sharing the journey, man. And through it, the most beautiful thing happened. And that's, I'm getting messages for people that are listening from across the country who are inspired by either myself or our guests that we bring on, like yourself, right? And I mean, to hold the thought of not doing this because of limited beliefs, you know what I mean? It's like, holy shit, like, no way, right?
Or caring about what other people think.
Yeah.
Like the people that are going to be negative or have negative things to say about something you're doing to move your life forward are not the people we should be listening to. But oftentimes we concern ourselves with what they're thinking about us. Big mistake, but necessary one.
Yeah.
It's part of being attached to a certain belief system and the fear of letting go of that belief. The example of family is the one that I use the most. And I don't know if you want to share your story of, some of the not so supportive things that you were told when you decided to really go off and do your own thing and start your own business. People are always going to tell you no, or it's not safe, or don't do that.
Right.
And it's almost always the people that haven't done anything.
Right.
But we love them.
Yeah, absolutely.
We give our ears to them. They have our hearts. And we've got to learn to lovingly let go and understand with compassion that person in their mind is trying to protect us.
Right.
In their minds, they're trying to keep us from failing. Now, deeper, they're just uncomfortable with the idea of going to a place that they've never been before. It's a scary thing.
Sure.
Human beings are wired to stay safe, going back to our origins of hunting and gathering. So I'm learning recently, mindset-wise, we are wired to play it safe. And so many people play it safe and never take a chance. that it's a shame.
Yeah.
So I know you shared with me, some of the things
Yeah,
you heard
yeah,
when you
no,
started.
yeah, and I think we talked about it on like one of the previous episodes. And in my situation, my father, I'm very fortunate with my parents. I had a good upbringing, great parentals, great influence there with my dad, and he's ultimately he's like my best friend, right?
Right.
And so I would always, and I still do, right? I pick up the phone, I give him a call, and he talks me through, or I talk through all of my, he's like a soundboard, right?
Right.
And so, previously the relationship we had now, I would absolutely base my decisions around his opinions, right? And because he was a trusted, resource for me and all that good stuff.
Right.
And I always know that he's looking out for my best interest. And it was just kind of funny though, because there was always a pattern with that too, right? And so again, caring about what other people think, people pleasing, all that kind of stuff, it kind of, kind of go down the patterns and realize, oh, well, that's where it came from.
Right.
Right.
Right. Of course.
And so I learned that later after going through my own, personal development journey, that kind of stuff that I'm still going through. Right. But when it came to business, I remember going up to my father, and this is like actually before I opened up this company, I had the opportunity to open up a franchise with another family member, and through my wife's family. And I remember I was excited. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, And I went and, hey Dad, check it out. This is what we got going on. I'm thinking X, Y, Z. I'm gonna go into business with them. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, what's up? He's like, well, dude, like, you got a good job. Like, you're doing more money than we ever made when you were growing up. Like,
Right.
why? Like, why risk it? Like, you guys just moved back from Texas because we had kind of went back and forth. And he's like, what you need right now is you need stability in your life, and you need to put down a good foundation for your family, not keep rocking the concrete kind of thing, right? And I'm like,
Right.
well, that makes sense. You're right. I'm not going to do it. And so I didn't. And then a few years later, because I'm telling you, man, once you have that itch, right? Like, right. So it seems like almost every 6 months I was coming up with, hey, Dad, I'm gonna, you know what I mean? But no, right before going into business, I'm like, hey, Dad, listen, I was doing this little side hustle. I was cleaning air ducts, doing this little maintenance stuff in homes, and it's going really well. I'm gonna go all in. I'm gonna leave my job. I'm gonna invest into some equipment, and we're just gonna go independent and become an independent restoration company, free of franchises. Just do it on my own. It's less expensive this way. Blah blah blah. I just kind of gave him the layout, and he looked at me. He's like, man, again, like, why? What for? Like you, like. Between you and my wife does well. She's a labor.
Let go of this belief.
Man.
What keeps itching? But Dad, you don't understand.
Yeah. And so at this point, I had it. I was done. Right. I was like, no, I'm going to do this. And ultimately, again, it's kind of funny because what set my freedom to, or what kind of like freed me from that opinion, was the opinion of my wife. Right. So I went from my dad to my wife, but the difference is that that's my partner in life. That's who I do life
Right.
with. Right. And so she gave me the green light. And when she gave me the green light, it was on. Right. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, this is the opinion that matters. Right. So with no disrespect to my father or anyone else, I said, yeah, I'm going to do it. And they're like, okay. And it's funny because, a few years later now, it's like, oh, that's my boy. Right.
Yeah.
And it's
right. Parents are great. Now
Yeah.
that I got kids, same thing,
Yeah.
right? When they're doing something bad, that's your kid, to the wife,
Yeah.
or she'll say the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, listen, I'm sure he's proud, but he was operating from a place of what he knew, what limited accomplishments he had or believed that were attainable. And, God bless, because you shared his story, and it sounds like he was always doing something extra to make extra for you guys to provide. And, I remember my mother always had a job. Her career was at the city of New York. And one time she went and she was working at Yankee Stadium in the concession stands, making like, this is dog shit money when minimum wage wasn't even $5 an hour. And, she was looking to do better for us. So kudos to them.
Yep.
I was just telling somebody about this the other day. I've been pretty fortunate, or maybe I just choose not to remember anybody telling me I couldn't do something. I'm sure there has been people along the way. I didn't grow up with my father, so I don't know. My mother is like my dad and my
Sure.
mom, everything else. And, I respected her opinion up to a certain age. And then I realized that, I learned some valuable lessons from them, but it was time to move on and establish. Like, your parents give you your core value system. And that can be good or bad. And
Right.
for us, thank God, it sounded like it was both good. And it wasn't perfect and
Right,
whatever.
right.
Never is, right? We're not perfect with our children, but we do the best we can. And I affectionately call it generational progress, right? One generation sacrificing joy, happiness, freedom,
Yep.
splurging in order to make the next generation better, their offspring have more.
Right.
We talked about giving our kids the things that we never had.
Yep, yep.
And I'm sure that you had things that your parents never had.
Right.
And obviously valuing that opinion comes naturally, but we tell ourselves that story. So if someone's going to validate that story, we tend to lean toward it. So if he's telling you, son, just build a foundation, and part of you scared to take that risk, you're going to say, you know what, dad knows his stuff.
Yep.
Let me do that. So
Yep.
I don't think we got to say it, but we got to say it because it's our parents.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not a knock on them.
Right,
It's not
right.
a knock on anybody's parents or friends or family. But if you truly have what you touched on, which is that itch, that burning desire for more, and not everybody has that. But bro, if it's nagging you repeatedly and you try to drown it out, whether through putting things off or drugs or alcohol, but it's still nagging you, that's proof that it's yours.
Yep.
You've got to go after it.
Yep.
You're doing something that's holding you back from your true purpose. And that's when life really starts to take off. It's when you put that little fear voice to the side and you start chasing that dream or that thing that's itching you. And, thank God that you had that itch, because you're the one, right?
Yep.
I know you guys come from the Ed Milet, Andy Frisella School of Self-Development too. I think that's how I met you, through a lot of those guys. And he said something that, along comes the one.
Yep.
That one person that changes their family line forever. Now your last name is going to ring bells for generations to come. Or at least that's the hope. We do our best. And I think people are so caught up in just surviving that there's no thought of what's going to happen after me.
Yeah.
Oh, I was one of those people that, even though my daughter's 6, it wasn't until my son was born that something really clicked for me. I had already been financially successful and we have a comfortable life, but something was missing. And I found myself drinking way too much. And one day my wife just made a comment about it to me. And that's really all it took for me to make the shift. And it didn't happen that easily overnight, but I had to put myself in the places, in the rooms that allowed me to kick those habits and move on with my life and quell all those itches that had been just nagging at me for, over a decade. So what I found was 15 years ago or so, when I was away, I wrote my life out and I had accomplished those things and there was nowhere else to go. So I just had myself in a place, and I never took the time to then set new goals, new far off, seemingly impossible or unattainable goals. And I had no purpose. So I was empty. Despite having a great life and a great family, I was empty inside, because a man needs to fulfill his purpose. It may not be the same for everybody, but for me, it was internally destroying me. And it wasn't until I stopped drinking, stopped smoking weed and doing drugs, that it really just transcended. My health got better. My relationship with my wife got better. My relationship with my kids and my business got better. Now I'm looking for all avenues of growth. Every day there's an audio book or a book in my hand. I'm on a treadmill or lifting weights, or I'm in the sauna, I'm going for a walk. And this is not to say that I don't miss days, but for the most part, if I'm not moving forward now, can't mask it with that bullshit that I was doing before. And so many people mask it, whether it be through food or alcohol or drugs or Netflix or the internet or social media, just scrolling. But they have that itch and it just keeps nagging at them. I just hope to shed some light on the realization that
Yeah.
until you step into that, you're not going to be complete. And it doesn't mean you've got to do anything. Nobody's saying you're going to be a billionaire or
Right.
none of that. Just you want to go help somebody. You want to have a better relationship with your kids. You want to have a better relationship with your parents, your cousin, whoever means anything to you. That takes a good, honest look at yourself. You have to be able to look in the mirror and say, am I doing the things that are moving me forward? And so many of us just get caught up in that limited belief system, as you touched on, that we came from, because we just accept it as reality. And we create our own reality, right? We get what we focus on the most.
Yep.
And unfortunately for most people, they get what they fear the most.
Yeah. Yep. And a key thing with that, that's why, for all that reason, I think what you're doing with the real mentor is something that's really gonna change some lives, man. If I just think back, man, and because still in progress, still working through limited beliefs, still going through the motions, right? And it's a lifelong journey, right? And it just, the thought of having that seed planted at an early age, and knowing that it's possible, like that would create such a gigantic shift, you know what I mean, in my life. Just because even now, right, like, it's funny because I'm taken back to the question, why did you go into business, right? And it's like, oh, buy back my time. That was my answer early on, right? It was, well, buy back my time. I want to have more time with my wife and kids. And because when I was a 9-to-5er, I worked a shit ton and traveled the country doing hurricane response and all kinds of things like that, doing our water damage restoration thing. And so I missed a lot. I missed a lot of time at home. And so I was desperate trying to make up for some of that lost time with them. And so, yeah, of course, having the freedom to spend more time at home was something that I desired. But it was funny, though, because when it came down to now talking about income and gross revenue and all that kind of stuff, I was like, I don't really need a lot. I just want to have my time. And then if I could do some good in the community and make an impact, and then, again, through surrounding myself with the right people and coaches and mentors and that kind of thing, I quickly was shown the impact I can make through my success. And that's what inspired me again to then go after becoming a successful business owner, right? A successful entrepreneur, knowing that I could impact a lot more lives if I have some more money, right? And so that kind of started it. And then from that point on, it was just kind of funny because I remember someone asking me what my goal was going to be, my revenue goal was going to be. And I'm like, I think next year I'll shoot for, maybe like 600,000. This is like going into year 2. It's like, what'd you do year 1? I like probably did like 300,000 or something. And I remember my coach saying, dude, like, what's wrong with you, man? You got to dream bigger. You got to go bigger. Like, you're holding yourself back. And then it was funny because then I started working with another coach, another consultant, and we worked through a bunch of stuff, went through the internal things, right? And started kind of kicking the beehive, going through overcoming some trauma and mental, deals and whatnot. And all of a sudden, man, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm gonna absolutely cross the 7-figure mark this year, and we're gonna get there, right? And lo and behold, all of a sudden, we made it, we got it, right? So it's like, sweet. We now again, to your point, it was time to create a new goal, right? And so I share that because to get to here, and we're now at a position where it was like December or October, November, December. So it's Q4 of 2023, and we're working up the new goal for 2024, right? And it was funny because even then, even after all this, and granted, it's only been 3 years in business and 2.5 years going through personal development. At that time, when it was time to make the goal, it was funny because the number I shot for was like, just maybe adding another million to what we did the previous year. And my coach looks at me, he's like, dude,
haven't you learned anything?
He's like, what's going on, man? Those are rookie numbers. We got to pump those numbers up. Right. And it was so funny because I realized that I was still holding myself back from dreaming big, and we ended up working through some things and suddenly, okay, cool. Now we have this monster goal And it was so funny because as soon as we kind of flipped that switch, all of a sudden we had the we basically saw it with how possible and how, we reverse engineered it. It's not impossible, super doable. The only thing that's holding us back is, of course, ourselves. And again, all this just to say that, had I had that seed planted earlier on, you know what I mean, how much further ahead I'd be now, right? And so, again, just my hats off to what you're doing with these kids, because we need it, man. Especially us that are, not necessarily surrounded by the best role models and mentors growing up and that kind of thing,
Yeah, man. Well, that's a hell of a story, and it speaks to the fact that manifestation, which you mentioned earlier, plays into this. Manifestation is a belief. You believe that 600 grand, doubling your business, was attainable because 10 times, $3 million, let's say. Whoa, that's scary.
Yeah.
How am I going to get there? But the truth is, it takes no energy more to say 600,000 than it does to say $3 million. Literally, it's just words. But once you speak those words into existence, then you can start to believe that you're capable. If you believed that you were capable of only 600, guess what you would have made?
Yeah.
600.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have touched 7 figures.
Right.
But if you said 3 million, and even if you said 3 and you got to 2, or 1.6 or 1.5, you're still 5 times or more ahead of what your current revenue was, which was $300,000. And listen, I know that better than anybody because I wrote lofty goals for myself, like I said, years ago, and I had no clue how I was going to get there, let alone I'm writing them in a prison cell, had a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. And I wrote these 7-figure goals, these ultimately 8-figure net worth goals for myself that just seemed so ridiculous to even myself at times back then. But I said, fuck it, it's just words. Let me write it down.
Yeah.
And you start to believe it. Lo and behold, last year, I joined up for the Tony Robbins Platinum Partnership. We're going out to Sun Valley, Idaho for a ski retreat. We get laid over in Chicago. And one of the other brothers from the program introduces me to a guy from the Midwest who happened to be, a couple hours away in Iowa. We meet on the line. Next thing you know, yeah, you guys can stay with me for the night. We now have closed on close to 8 figures worth of commercial real estate in the Midwest within a 7-month period. And go back 15 years, bro, that's in my notebook.
Yeah.
To be a commercial real estate owner and have 8 figures worth of commercial real estate. You can't make this shit up.
Yeah.
You can't make this shit up. So that speaks to the power of manifestation, but you still have to show up.
Yeah.
Right. I was fortunate enough that opportunity presented itself to me when I had the means to invest in it with someone who was already doing extremely well in that business and brought me in at a level where I was safe. Mm-hmm. Because if you're learning that on the fly and you're buying your first building and just scraping by, or you're buying your first property and learning how to flip it, you're going to make all the mistakes that everybody makes because you're trying to do it all yourself. Mm. So get next to the person that has what you want. Take a smaller piece of that pie instead of trying to do it all by yourself, because essentially you're paying for an education. So the same way that you have a coach, I now invest with my partner, who is essentially a coach and a mentor, who shows me how to do this in a way that makes me immediately successful. Mm-hmm. Now, that's something I only learned through trial and error and over the years, where I get to skip the line. Yeah. Because now I do have the resources and I have bought back my time and I have the money to invest, and I'm in the rooms where the people that are already successful at another level, which I want to be at, are. So I get next to these people. I'm a connector naturally. I'm a people person. I really have an open mind and an open heart that welcomes all people from all walks of life into mine, if they're willing. And here I meet this awesome character, and we just hit it off. And he presented an opportunity to attain goals that I wrote 15 years ago and had no clue how to get to. And speaking fairly, I didn't make any strides to learn that business until I met this guy. So you've got to believe, first and foremost. So those seeds, they're everything, man.
Yeah.
But then you've got to, at some point, obviously you got to put in the work.
Yep. Yeah. You
got to get next to the people that are doing it, bro. You know, if you're learning your business, I don't know your story, but I'm guessing there were some people along the way that helped, you know, kind of elevate your game that you learned from.
Yeah.
You know, you weren't so stubborn that you just wanted to keep doing it all on your own. And yet and still I have colleagues like that despite being well off, they need to do everything on their own instead of just investing their money and partnering with somebody else. They need that control. They need to be in control of everything. And again, that's a mindset thing. That's a belief thing as well. You have to be willing to let go of some control.
Yep.
Especially if you got somebody who's willing to bring you in a mentee capacity, and help you figure things out a lot quicker than you would otherwise figure out on your own. So, you know, my story is one of a lot of trials and tribulations. It would take hours and hours. You know, that's why I'm writing the book, because now that I'm writing it, it's like, it's rehashing my life, because so many times we take for granted the journey and how we got here. We're so caught up in the day-to-day and the present that we forget how we got here. So, you know, the trauma, the abuse, some of the parental misguidance maybe, or lack of support, or some bad things that we learned. I always say, listen, the past is the past. You learn the lessons and you trim the fat, right? Mm-hmm. It's like that cheap meat that we grew up on.
Yeah.
So they like eating the fat where we're from.
Yeah, they're chewing on it, man. They stay chewing.
Not my ass. I was always the student kid. I'm like, get that off my plate. If it's not meat, I'm not eating it.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, it just speaks to trimming the fat, right?
Mm-hmm.
You take the valuable lessons and you trim the fat. You know, you learn from your mistakes and you continue to move forward. And what's the best way to learn? From others and from mistakes. And if you can combine those two with an open mind, the sky's the limit.
Yeah. And that's a really good segue now to one of the questions that I actually had for you regarding your book is, so what? Kind of a loaded question, but what ultimately inspired you to put it down on paper? You know, put your story down.
I've always known that I was going to write a book. So I got to look back in those composition notebooks.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
it might be in there. Yeah, you know what? Yeah. I'm pretty sure it is, to be honest with you. And what a cool story. You know, you don't think it's a cool story till you share it with other people and you're like, oh, wow. Like, they're an affirmation that you've been through a lot of shit, bro, to still be moving forward and not have given up. So, you know, I guess now I'm speaking from my ego, but that cool story has potential to impact lives. And I think it gives me the ear of the young people that need what I have to teach, and the people that I'm going to bring into the fold have to teach the most. Because I'm not coming from a place of perfection. I'm not coming from a place of having it all figured out. I've failed far more than I've succeeded, but I never stopped trying. And that's the lesson of life. My life is especially, it's just never stop trying. You're not going to always get it right. You're going to look ridiculous. Sometimes the world is going to knock you on your ass. In my case, it took away my freedom. Basically, I took away my freedom, my bad choices. But that's where I needed to be in order to learn more valuable lessons, emotional intelligence, loyalty from my wife. going through that situation and sticking by me.
Yeah.
And, you know, that story, the book is called Beyond the Bronx. So again, the Bronx is a constant theme. You're from the Bronx, whether you're Jennifer Lopez, Fat Joe,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. You're from the Bronx. You're from the Bronx. Cardi B, Wesley Snipes. There's
Yep.
some great characters that come
Yep.
from the Bronx,
Yep.
and it really teaches you about yourself. And the life that I've been fortunate enough to lead has taught me so many lessons. And I just want to tie in my stories to some of the lessons that I've learned in life. So we work on ourselves on a daily basis through self-development, listening to others. There's a lot of cliches, there's a lot of quotes, there's a lot of belief systems that get regurgitated. And when you take a look at your life, whether you're aware of those cliches, quotables and things, you look at it and you're like, holy shit.
Yep.
You attach stories in your life to the things you're now learning and be like, oh, that's how I got past that situation. It's because A happened, then B happened. So, trusting the process, believing that even in your darkest moments, this isn't where you belong, that you're meant for something greater. And just holding on to those things, they give you the heart. They give you the wherewithal to keep moving forward despite nothing in your reality at that moment showing you that it's possible. You get your ass back up and you keep fighting. And this is why I got Ali on the wall.
Yep.
And boxing, even though it stinks these days, is one of my favorite sports because I think it's just raw. You got two men or two women or two, people inside of a ring or a cage nowadays, just testing each other. And those people, more than anybody, I think, know what they're made of. Not in a business sense, but in a primal sense.
Yeah.
They just know they literally get punched in the face, knocked down, and get back up. Not always. You may get knocked out, but then you get back in the ring. And then there's some, well-known fighters that get knocked out and they're never the same, right? And that says something about them. And that's not a knock on them. It's just, it tells you a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
So that's why I love that sport. And I relate it to life all the time because life, when you take chances, will always punch you in the face.
Yep.
Now, if you don't take any chances, you're not going to get punched in the face, but you're not going to learn anything about yourself either. So we're in a blessed position to have that fire in our belly. And that's what drove me to writing my book, is that fire in my belly that has gotten me here. I know that there's people out there, whether they be kids, whether they be Hispanic, Black, from the inner city, from Mexico, from Portugal, it doesn't matter. Worldwide, color, race, there are people all over the world that have a fire inside of them and they don't know why. They don't know what it means yet. So I just want to, the only thing I understand is my world, my story, right? I see the world through my own two eyes, which is very limited, but I know this is what worked for me. When this happened, I was able to do this by simply believing or by simply taking a step back and, fighting another day, but not giving up. So the book is my life, my stories, but tied into the lessons. So it's Beyond the Bronx, from Bronx streets to millionaire suites. And it's just a book about life's lessons and how it may benefit anybody who reads it from any walk of life, because we all face challenges that, have the potential to either knock us down or lift us up. It really is how we shape it in our minds. And I think my experience really speaks to that. I could have easily given up, already making six figures and doing well for myself. And then boom, freedom taken for 2 years. But giving up, it gets even deeper. I came home and I got violated on parole. I had to do another 5 months, just not following the rules. So again, it wasn't an overnight realization of of this success that I have now. It's the culmination of decades of work and mistakes and failing and getting up and trying again. And at 45, I'm just getting started. That's the exciting part, because now I believe without a doubt that all those things that I'm setting out to accomplish are going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have the patience to allow them to happen, to put in the work every day, show up, be consistent, and the end result will figure itself out. But I know that it's going to happen, and I'm going to end up far, far ahead of where I started. But never forget where I started, because that's the grounding. That's the, that is what made me who I am. And, that, in the long story longer, is what the book is about.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And yeah, no, that's going to be a great read, man. When are you looking to?
So we were looking for next month, but imperfect action, fail forward, call it what you will.
Yeah.
The more that I'm out in those circles with authors and people that have written numerous books, there's a belief that it takes at least a year. And I just started the process last September.
Mm-hmm.
So we were hoping for first quarter this year, but it's probably going to be third or fourth quarter this year, because I really want to put out a book that is worthy of what I want it to be. I don't want to put out a book just to do it. Yeah. The people that I'm working with, they put together books for entrepreneurs in the sales space or the motivational space or the speaker space. And it makes sense to have a book.
Yeah.
So you're supposed to have a book in order to do those things. It's kind of the rite of passage. You're, successful, mentor, author, speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a book just to have a book. But I want it to be a good read.
Yeah.
People pick up. I want it to be a bestseller. So I know that I've got to keep refining it.
Yeah.
And refining it until it becomes what it's supposed to be. But again, I'm not a guy who's going to wait for the package to be ready and then start promoting it or talking about it. I want people to know that it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was going to take 3 months because I was in a rush to get a book so I could start the speaking process.
Yeah.
Bro, it's going to take a year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality of the situation. But I'm patient, and it'll all come out exactly the way it's supposed to come out when it comes out. And it'll be a great finished result, because like I told you, you only get to write your first book once.
Yeah.
And I want it to be a good one and really impact some lives and, be something to be proud of, because my kids are going to read it one day. So, yeah. I want them to be proud of, what their old man did.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they will be, man. That's awesome. I'm just keep me posted on that, dude, and we'll make sure we push that out on socials as well, because I think that's gonna be a hell of a story.
I appreciate you, brother. We definitely will. You'll be getting some copies for sure.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, man. I wanna go back to I just want to share, man, because I think it's the coolest shit ever, right? When you talk about what you wrote in your composition journals and compare it against where you are and how that stuff has manifested into reality, and it's real, right? And it cracks me up because I that's how I kind of stumbled onto this whole thing with self development and everything else. Was I stumbled upon my first coach's vision board. He had it online in the archives of some of the paperwork that he was having us run through. Because what it was I had hired him, this first coach, as a sales consultant, and he was just kind of sharing some tricks and whatnot on how to drum up some more business, some B2B marketing type curriculum. And so I'm kind of going through it, and I'm a little bored, honestly, because I'm like, yeah, I know, man, yeah, I got it, like B2B marketing, got it. You know what I mean? So,
right.
So I'm just kind of blowing through, and it was funny. And his name's Shane O'Dazier. We'll have him on here soon. He was supposed to jump on today, actually, but he
all right.
He had a coaching call to get to something, but it was kind of funny though, because I hired him because I wanted to kind of break into some of the stuff that he was teaching, but the value came from the exposure to the seed, if you will.
Right.
He planted the seed inadvertently, I'd say, because I jumped into his archives and I found his vision board, and I'm like, what the hell is this? You know what I mean? And again, because of lack of exposure to this world, I had no idea. I mean, I've heard of vision boards at some point in my life because I clicked on it. Oh, let's see what this looks like, right?
Right.
But I've never seen one. I never, you know what I mean? And so I opened it up, and I went through it, and I've shared this with him, so he knows that I looked at it. But I'm going through it, and it was just, it was a list of affirmations. It was a long list of affirmations. It was photos of things he wanted, right? Just a typical vision board.
Right.
It had statements of what he, how he wanted to be seen, right, in public. Like, just, it was a really dialed in vision board. He called it a morning formula, and I saw that, and for some reason, man, it hit me deep, and so I took it. And then I took out his pictures. I put in my pictures, right?
Nice.
I took out his name. I added my name, and then I added, just kind of started editing because it was in a Word document.
Right.
I started editing it, and the funniest part is that he had no idea that I was in there. You know what I mean? And and I was just kind of doing this on the side. And then I also found a book list that he had of books that he had read, and the first book that I picked up was actually Grant Cardone, the 10X Rule, which is a really good starter book, right? Because it's so easy. It's an easy, fun read, and I did it in audio, so Grant just talking all his shit and stuff. It makes it really entertaining. And so I'm listening to Grant Cardone's 10X Rule, and I'm manipulating my own, putting together my own morning formula, right? Vision board kind of thing. And so his routine, and he had it listed there too. It's like, wake up in the morning, pray, gratitude, and read this morning formula. And I'm like, I'm going to do that. I don't know why, right? I had no idea, no one telling me anything, but I'm just like, I'm going to follow this and see what happens. Cause
Right.
you know what I mean? Cause I see where he's at, and I'd love to be where he is. And so I just started kind of mimicking what was there. And instantly, right, I started feeling better. Things started happening at work, and I didn't understand everything, but I just felt phenomenal. And I'm like, oh, this is the shit's. I'm onto something.
Working.
It's working. Well, as I progressed in my development, that program ended, and I thanked them, and I told him at that point, 4 months. It was a 4-month program. So at the end of the 4 months, I told him, I said, hey, man, that was all good shit. Like, appreciate you. But where I benefited the most from you was this world of personal development that you introduced me to. And he's like, really? Do you think I should teach more of that? And I'm like, yeah, like, this shit's great, right? So I read more books. That's where I got into Arate with Andy and Ed, because it, kind of went from there to there.
Right.
And just kind of, I went all in on personal development, went all in on reading, went all in on following the routine and everything else. But what's funny was that I hadn't opened up that morning formula, that Word document. I hadn't opened it up since then. So it was probably, at this point, it was probably 2.5 years ago or something like that, right? And so I opened it up. I have an in-person mastermind that we host here locally, and invite open invitation if anyone wants to hit me up about that. It's always just good to get local businesses together and chop it up.
Sure.
So I was gonna just show them the PDF, and it was just funny because I opened it up and I kind of stopped. I was like, holy shit! The picture of a hotel room overlooking New York City. I was just there, and I did it.
That's what I mentioned.
A picture of the Disneyland resort, or Disneyland, the hotel, like, right, like in the big suite right there at Disneyland. My wife and I were just there, this last year, right? And it's like, did that. A picture of Puerto Rico. Went there with my wife and her family. And so I just started looking, and then I started reading how I describe myself in these statements, these affirmative statements. And I asked some of my friends that were in that room, my colleagues that were in that room, I said, does that sound like me? He goes, dude, that's exactly who you are. And so I've been so focused on the present or on the future that I didn't take the time to, like, open this thing up and see how far I've come, in my own development. And I've become the person that I wrote that I was hoping to be. Right? In just 2.5 years of putting in the work, 2.5 years of going through the motions, working on myself, so forth and so on. And again, by no means am I done, but I encourage anyone and everyone to journal, right?
Absolutely.
To document their journey, because suddenly I opened it up 2.5 years later, and it's like, holy shit, like, you see it.
It
It's
works.
tangible and it's real. And so
It's tangible. There you go. And you
yeah,
got something to measure it against. And, you know, you don't have to, there's practices where you go over your goals and
yeah,
you set deadlines every day. But what you're talking about was set it and forget it. Like I wrote it, I focused on it for a certain amount of time, I refined it, and then I went to work on it. And when I look back, holy shit, I accomplished all these things. And the vision board, for the listeners, there's a tool out there called Freeform on the, it's an app, which they have on iPhone, probably on Android, and you can create a virtual vision board. And I did something very similar in 2023 and knocked out, let's say, 70% of the things that I wanted to accomplish. And, again, give me another year, give me another 18
right.
months, and it's only going to get better. And you mentioned something about getting clear, and clarity and having a clear vision like your coach did of the outcome that you want is so key. So there's belief, and then there's getting clear
Yeah.
on that version of yourself that you want to become. So many people are stuck in, this is who I am, this is the way it is what it is. But no, you're in complete control of creating the person that you want to become. Anybody who's great, legendary, that we admire, usually on TV, whether it's celebrity or a sports figure, they created that person. That person didn't exist. They worked and they worked and they worked and they worked until they became that person. But they were clear, make no mistake, when they started that journey, and it may have developed into what it was, but they had an idea that they were going to be this figure. Because without that idea, without that clarity, you don't get there. So kudos to your coach. And there was no mistake that you stumbled on that document, and you also speak to just editing the document. And that speaks to not having to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
You want to be successful, somebody's already done it. You just need to learn what they did and implement it into your own daily life. You don't need to figure it all out on your own. And Cardone's book, 10X, I haven't read, but there's a book by Dan Sullivan called 10X is Easier Than 2X.
Right.
And I'm thinking that's where he got the concept from, because I could be wrong, but I think Dan Sullivan was before that. Again, don't quote me. But it's so true, because in order to 10X, you've got to step outside of that belief system that says, I'm going to make 600 grand, but I'm already making 300. It's not easy, but it's attainable to double. I just got to do twice as much.
Yeah.
But when you say I want to do 10 times as much, you can't just do the same shit 10 times more.
Right.
There's a limit to what you're capable of doing. What you have to do is remove yourself from the belief system that you currently have that got you to 300,000. Now learn an entirely new system of beliefs, practices, and scaling techniques to get you 10 times bigger than where you're currently at. And that's the power of 10X. It removes you from the limited belief of 2X. See, 2X is, I just do more of the same and I'll get there.
Yep.
And then you get to that point and then you just say, oh, I'll 2X some more. But there's limits on that, because it revolves around you more times than not.
Right.
What 10Xing does is make you implement strategies and systems that rely on other people that you manage maybe, or oversee, or hire the people to manage. And that allows you to make tremendous strides.
Yep.
So it's a thought process. And if you don't take the time to get clear and let go of that control and understand that you're not able to do these things on your own. Even Michael Jordan had Phil Jackson.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Even the Golden State Warriors had Steve Kerr. So coaches are integral. They're an integral part of success. And you've got to be willing to let go of that limited belief that you know everything. Yeah. Because if you did, you'd have it all already.
Yeah.
And Grant Cardone is a famous example of someone who really didn't attain success till later in life. Love him or hate him, because he's not brash, but he's an over the top character.
Yeah.
And you're gonna love him or you're gonna hate him, but one way or another, you're gonna listen to him. And that's a powerful thing. But he believes in himself, and he was able to do that through systems, teams, and knowing how to lead people. He can only do but so much on his own.
Right.
And that is the same for all of us.
Yep.
We cannot do that.
Yeah, dude, that's huge. And it's funny that you say, you know, you're talking about like the, you know, the 2X, right? And that, you know, kind of to tie it back into the earlier conversation, that was exactly what I was doing when I was developing the goal at the end of Q3 or the end of Q4 or during Q4 of last year. When I said, okay, cool, yeah, we broke 7 figures, yeah. So what's your next goal? Well, I'm gonna 2X that goal. And he's like, and he, after diving in and looking into the limited beliefs and why not 10X, right? It came out and it was like, oh shit, I got this repeated pattern of wanting to stay in my comfort zone where I have control of everything, right? And so ultimately that was what was leading me to have this, like, you know, this small goal versus thinking bigger. It was a combination of limited beliefs and wanting to stay comfortable, right? And not be uncomfortable, right? Not have to go beyond what we've already done, just do more of the same.
Do more of the same, yeah.
Right. And it was a trap. And it was just so funny because once that was identified, and that's when we, you know, I 10X my goal, right? And all of a sudden, you know, it was pretty cool. It was liberating is what it was. It was freeing, but it was also kind of like, okay, cool. Like, you know, again, through the process of reverse engineering what it would look like and all that kind of stuff and implementing all the systems that we've been building and putting together, the processes and putting the right people in place. Now we're, you know, and again, it's happening now, right? Now we're in the thick of it. We're not in the thick of it, but we're in progress of that goal and deployed the systems, and you know we have the people now, so we're kind of going through it. We just started month 3, you know, or so it's pretty interesting. And with that, I'd like to kind of move into what we talked about yesterday off screen as well, because you know, you just basically hit it. But it was when we started having this conversation about needing to let go and delegate more in order to scale the business, right? Because you just hit it. Because a lot of people, like I mentioned yesterday, I was in a room in a different mastermind with 10 entrepreneurs. And out of the 10 entrepreneurs, 7 of them had the same problem that they brought to the table. And essentially what the problem was is the inability to, you know, to grow or scale. And the direct solution that we kind of came to was the importance of delegating the work and stepping outside into a different role for yourself as the entrepreneur, right? So I'd love for you to touch on that, because what we talked about yesterday was fire.
Yeah, the entrepreneur is usually their own obstacle. And that's because they believe, and we're both guilty of this at certain points in our career and starting out, that we're the only one capable enough of handling that problem. And it's so not true. And we are good at something in particular. Sure, we can, you know, I can market the business, which is my forte. And I can, you know, put together systems in the office and I process paperwork and scan and do all these menial things that would consume my time. So I am somebody who rarely goes into the office. I may show face once or twice. Once a week. I'm not even going to say twice a week, because that's a straight lie. Once a week, maybe every other week sometime. And my real value is out marketing, attracting clientele, keeping my existing clientele happy and fulfilled. And I, a long time ago, learned to buy back my time. And I'm guessing you're referencing the Buy Back Your Time book by Dan Martell. Is that where you learned the strategy? I got a funny story of meeting Dan, but it's brilliant in that by giving up the need to control and buying your way out of these tasks that are taking up your time, you're essentially freeing yourself up to do what you're more valuable doing. In the case of business, this is going to attract more business, or, you know, closing the big deals, or going out and, you know, finding other avenues for your business to get into. It also frees you up in your personal life. to do the things that really mean something. Spend more time with your kids. Invest more time into your wife, who has a lot of bearing on how successful you are, because your partner and who you choose to be with is an extension of your energy. And if that's bad, you're not bringing your best self to the table, let alone bringing your best self to the kids. You know, I've met people all over the place where, you know, I'm a great dad, but not the best husband. And I'm like, you can't be the best dad if you're not the best husband. You're probably a decent dad, don't get me wrong, but you're not the best dad that they can have. That's just the truth of it, bro. And that comes from letting go of that limited belief. And that limited belief says that you got it all figured out. So Dan, I was fortunate enough to meet at Date with Destiny in 2022, which was my first event at Tony Robbins' Palm Beach studio. And Dan was my partner for like 5 days during the event. Taps me on the shoulder in the morning one day, said, "You want to be my partner?" I had no idea who the fuck Dan Martell is. And we just hanging out, two of the boys. And Dan is the coolest, most humble, most giving, generous guy with his time, his ideas. Didn't know who he was till I got back home and Googled him. And I texted him, and I'm like, "Dan, thanks for being so humble and cool and sharing your time and ideas. You're kind of a big deal. I didn't know." You know, at the time he told me he was releasing his book, Buy Back Your Time. I went straight to Amazon. I bought a copy. And, you know, I pre-ordered. And Dan inadvertently was the inspiration for my social media. So I had not been on social media for 6 to 8 years for the reasons I said earlier in this episode, which was it looked like I was showing off to the people I grew up around in my family. So I just erased my social media. I disappeared for 6 to 8 years. And because of Dan, I literally started on social media again because he was such a big figure on social media at the time. And since then, he's blown up to become something even more special. So Dan at the time, we're talking December 2022, and Dan just hosted a whole segment on Tony Robbins' Business Mastery Palm Beach stage as a guest speaker within the 13 months that I had met him. Now, Dan was already doing big things, but Dan really took off after that. And it shows me what's possible. I'm part of his coaching calls. So I'm part of that, you know, learning curve, and also following him and seeing how he lives his life. And he is the epitome of having bought back his time, down to the most menial things, because he really understands the concept of it's not worth my time. And when you're starting out, you don't have that luxury. Somewhere along the way, you have enough money to trade for time. But it's the decision to let go, the decision to not be in control of whatever that situation is, that holds so many people back. So for myself, it was the delivery component of all my medical equipment. You know, on any given month, we have hundreds and hundreds of patients and deliveries. Now, I could be the dispatch guy, and I could own the trucks, and I could hire the drivers or hire somebody to dispatch for me, and I'd probably keep a decent percentage more in my pocket by doing that. But the level of involvement and headache that would come as a result of dealing with New York City traffic and people not being home, and I want no parts of that. So early on, I was fortunate enough to come across somebody I had worked with at a previous place, and he came on board as a partner. And I offered him a hell of a deal, and he offered me the peace of mind to know that I could go do what I do, which is market and connect, and he could do what he does so well, which is the logistical part of the business, which I have no desire to be part of. So I gave up some money for that, significant amounts of money, but I was able to scale the company to a better place because I let go of that. Because if I'm in the office 4 or 5 days a week, I'm putting out fires. Everybody's looking to you. So almost by removing yourself, you're removing yourself from the day-to-day operations, and you're allowing your team to figure out for themselves how to do something. Or they can text you or text the person that's in charge to figure out that problem, which again is just not worth your time. It's not a knock on anybody, but that's why you have employees and you take care of them and you pay them well and you give them incentives, because my time is best spent doing what I do well, which is connecting with people. But it's also freed me up now to build myself up to this next chapter of who I want to be and get clear on that and move toward that. So there's no way that I could be getting up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning to go to the gym, journal, pray, get into state, do my sauna, do my cold plunge, do my red light therapy, get on the treadmill, read, do any of this shit that I'm doing to make myself a better person if I hadn't taken the time and let go of the control to buy back some of that freedom. So I say that, and I'll wrap it up with, money will not buy you happiness. Money is not the root of all evil, but money will buy you freedom. And what you choose to do with that freedom is solely up to you. So you can choose to piss it away and drown yourself in vice, like I did at some points in my life, or I can choose to use that freedom to create a better version of myself to make more impact in the world. And that's the new version of Sean Martin. So, you know, money made that possible. But it was a journey, and it took figuring it out. And, you know, I have no doubt that Dan was placed in my circle at that event to get me on social media. And then a few months later, I posted a video of me speaking at my old community college, grainy video from the cell phone that my wife had taken, 20-second clip. I cut it with some poignant stuff I was saying. I was really just freestyling, terrible speaker. And I posted that clip. I'm like, all right, this is the journey I'm going to go on. I wasn't posting pictures of my kids. At that point, I just was. I got on social. I'm posting the usual family stuff. Then I posted that video. Within 36 to 48 hours, I get a DM from my now editor, and he goes, listen, that video really, you know, impacted me, the voice, everything, what you said, it just made so much sense to me. I hope you don't mind. I created a short edit for you. Dude, that's how I found my editor that does these amazing for me.
Yeah, I love your shit, man. Yeah.
Thank you. But it wasn't, you know, I meet Dan, I get on social. I post one video of me speaking, it reaches the Philippines, and my man reaches out with a video he created for me. And I was in the process of looking for an editor, but looking for an editor is not an easy thing to do if you don't know what you're doing. The editor found me. Yeah. Because God knew that I was on my mission. So he presented this guy. And since then, we've created hundreds of videos. I'll get a few out of this podcast because I'm filming myself. And all you have to do is film yourself, and you've naturally created content. Another, you know, thing that I learned from Dan, who learned from Gary V, the great Gary V. Yep. And that is a testament to God rolling out the red carpet when you decide to take a chance on yourself and step into a greater purpose than yourself, which in my case is to help others. And I just went to the races, man. People are like, well, you're spending money on social. You know, I pay my editor. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not selling coaching. I'm not selling a product. I just know that I have some gems to drop. I have some knowledge to impart on people, and I'm gonna produce these videos and just put it out there at my own expense, and trust that one day, you know, it'll pay for itself, whether it's through making impact, changing lives, coming across somebody's feed for that day, and it was just the thing they needed to hear. And I get messages like that every day. But bro, that resonated with me. Strangers, obviously. And, you know, thanks for posting that, or they'll share it. And I always take the time to say thanks for sharing. Because just by doing that, I'm impacting lives. Yep. And I'm creating a ripple effect. So yeah, man, I can't wait to see what the next 10 years looks like. And I have plenty of clearly stated goals this time around, so that I don't fall into any complacency or you know, black holes of emptiness, because I don't know where I'm going. So
no, that's awesome, man.
I'm looking forward to see your journey unfold as well, brother.
Yeah, man. No, I'm the gas pedal to the ground, man. You know, trying to overcome a lot of that comfort, a lot of that complacency that's held me back in the past, and I'm getting uncomfortable. It's so funny, man. Like how there's there are these different stages, right, in business, and we've been very fortunate to grow, to grow 100% year 1 to year 2 to year 3, and now we're in year 4 trying to do much more than that. But it's just funny that now that we're at this point, the set of problems, not problems, but just the set of challenges are different. It's some of the things that worked before, that were like, staying in comfort, it's not going to work this time around, right? We got to risk more. Now we got to invest more. Now we got to, just kind of put out a little bit more to get to the next level. And it's an exciting place to be. But it's definitely testing the comfort and testing patience, and it's exciting, and I'm all in, man. I'm blessed to have these problems.
It means you're growing.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part when you come from very little and you don't have this clear, great vision of yourself, that once you get to a certain level of comfort, you let your foot off the gas.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm admittedly guilty of being on cruise control for years at some times in my life, where I'm not making strides of being better. But now I understand this, and I've set these goals. And if I have these goals, I show up every day, and I understand that it's incrementally chipping away at getting to that vision of myself that I have, and helping those 10 million kids, and writing that book, or getting to 9 figures in net worth, which is now my ultimate goal, which years ago would have never been something. Tony Robbins' event, they were like, well, what's your number? Your all-in number, where you're happy, you got everything you need, and you're just retired and chilling. And that number was a good number, but it wasn't a number I'm capable of. So that number is now my few years from now number.
Yeah.
And that big number is where I want to get to, because I know that I'm capable of it. It's just a matter of believing it, putting in the work, and trusting the process. So
I love it, man.
The journey we're on.
That's it, man. Clarity and purpose.
Yes, sir.
Awesome, bro. Man, Sean, is there anything else you want to touch on or say before we start wrapping up?
No, I got to wrap it too, but it's been a pleasure, my brother. I really appreciate you having me on. Like we discussed, it was going to flow pretty naturally. I hope that, some of the things that we shared today can help impact the lives of people that are on the come up, or people that need a little inspiration, or people that need somebody that can be an example of what's possible, that they don't necessarily have to know how they're going to get it. Just believe that they're going to get it and put in some work, and things will start to unfold in your favor. So, I appreciate you having me on, and potentially impacting the people that decide to click on that link and see this video or hear that podcast. And we'll just keep doing more of the same.
That's awesome, Sean. Yeah, I have no doubt that this is going to impact some lives, man. There's a lot of gems in here, and I can't wait to share with everybody. And I'll be sure to share your socials, links, and that kind of thing on the description and bios and whatnot, so people could reach out and just get with you guys a little bit, connect with you.
Absolutely, brother. I appreciate you. Thank you again.
All right, brother. Have a good one, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. Thank you.